One of my favourite Christmas carols is O Come, Emmanuel. And we'll be singing that after the sermon this morning. It's a carol that has stood the test of time. It actually has its origins about 1200 years ago in monastic life in the 8th or 9th century. And the words are from a traditional Latin Advent hymn from that time. One of the reasons I love it is actually because of its kind of haunting quality. When we think of Christmas music, we might think immediately of kind of upbeat tunes with bells and harps and chimes. And I love those too. Those are good, those are fun, those are bright. But O Come, Emmanuel has a distinctly biblical feel to it. It is haunting, and yet it is hopeful. The words are full of longing, and they are sung by people who know that they are living in a broken place. Sung by people who are aware of the state of the world, who have experienced its hardships and its pain. And so, because of that, they long for the arrival of this person called Emmanuel. Who is this person? Well, we read about him in Isaiah 11. It's Jesus. Emmanuel, as we'll see on Christmas Day, that's the name we'll be looking at on Christmas Day. But a spoiler alert, Emmanuel means God is with us. And so this carol is about longing for Jesus to come into our broken world, to fix it and to fix us. It's a carol that doesn't gloss over the hard parts of life, but rather embraces them, and in doing that, embraces the way of Jesus, looks to him as our only hope and comfort. When we think about it like that, it actually makes a lot of sense that this carol would have its roots in monasticism. These men and women who had embraced hardship, who had rejected the comforts of the world, and who decided to dedicate their life waiting on Jesus. And so O Come, Emmanuel isn't really a Christmas carol. It's an Advent carol. It's an Advent carol. Because, of course, Advent is all about waiting. Advent is about waiting and being ready for Christmas. That doesn't simply mean getting ready for Christmas. Doesn't just mean, make sure we put up the tree and get our presents and prepare the food. Advent is about preparing ourselves for the arrival of Jesus. Because that's what happened that first Christmas. Jesus arrived, God joined us, Emmanuel, God with us. So through his advent, we relive his arrival. We participate in that longing for Jesus, and we prepare ourselves and we prepare our hearts to receive him. Another way in which O Come, Emmanuel is quite different from other carols is that it doesn't tell the Christmas story in the way that we often think about it. So there's no herald angels harking, there's no flocks being watched by night, there's no mangers, there's no three wise men. But whilst the actual nativity narrative doesn't feature in the carol, it is full of biblical imagery. Each verse begins with the request, O come, so come to us, and then it's followed by a different description of Jesus. Rod of Jesse, Dayspring, Key of David, Desire of Nations. They all sound a bit weird, don't they? They're kind of odd nicknames to give someone. And they're maybe not names we're very familiar with. So what is this all about? Well, these are all titles that are used in the Old Testament. They are descriptions of what Jesus is like. The prophets are telling the church about Jesus, who he is, what he's like, and what he would do. And so through Advent, we are going to look at some of those names together. Another carol that I really love is What Child Is This? It opens with the question, what child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap, is sleeping. And the chorus answers, this is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing, haste, haste to bring him praise, the babe, the Son of Mary. Often, if people ever give Jesus a second thought at Christmas, it simply is a nice story about a little baby being born. But it's so much more than that. What child is this? It is Christ the King, the rod of Jesse, the key of David, the desire of nations, Emmanuel. So, we're going to look at these titles together over Advent so that we know exactly who it is we are waiting for and preparing ourselves for. I wonder, what do you usually think of as being like the first sign of Christmas coming? It's Christmas trees, I think. I love it. You see those Christmas trees go up, and we love Christmas trees, don't we? I know I do. I know a lot of us love Christmas trees. They are beautiful and bright. They shine out into the dark evenings. They bring colour into a dull winter. They're a symbol of life in an otherwise dying and dull time of the year. And so it's fitting that we start our Advent series by thinking about a tree. Jesus' family tree. The first description from the carol O Come, Emmanuel that we are looking at is Jesus as the rod of Jesse. We sing, O come, thou rod of Jesse, free thine own from Satan's tyranny, from depths of hell thy people save, and give them victory over the grave. So probably our first questions are, what is a rod and who's Jesse? This title, Rod of Jesse, comes from Isaiah 11 verse 1. We read the whole of Isaiah just a few moments ago, didn't we? We read, there shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his roots shall bear fruit. Or, if we read an older English translation, it says, there shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. So this verse and this line in the carol is describing a branch or a shoot or a rod that will grow out of this tree stump. But this isn't a verse about gardening or how to get your trees to regrow once they've been cut down. Because Isaiah he's not talking about an oak stump or a beech stump or an ash stump or a fir stump. He's talking about the stump of Jesse. So who's Jesse? Well, we've got a couple of Jessies in our church. It's not these Jessies. Jesse was a man from Bethlehem. You can read about him in 1 Samuel. And he was the father of King David, who David was the first true king of Israel. And so Isaiah is talking about a family tree, Jesse's tree. The family tree of this man called Jesse, the father of King David. And Isaiah is telling us that a new branch, a new stem, is another way you could translate the word rod. A new stem will grow from this family tree. But there's something unusual about this family tree, isn't there? Because it's not really a tree in the way we think of trees. This new branch isn't growing out at the very end reaches of a bough, or out the end of a bigger branch. This branch is growing from the stump. It seems as though this family tree has been cut down. Maybe the tree was rotten, or fruitless, or no good. And so all we're left with is a stump. But Isaiah tells us that from this stump, this tree that looks dead, new growth will come. This is a prophecy about the birth of Jesus. So let's have a look at who is in this family tree and what it's telling us about Jesus. So Isaiah's done some of the hard work for us. He's told us, hasn't he? He's already identified Jesse for us. He's the stump. Jesse is the stump, the trunk of this family tree. But if we're familiar with the Bible, we might ask, why isn't it the stump of David? Throughout the Bible, Jesus is often spoken of as being David's ancestor. David is the first true king of Israel, and Jesus is the one who would come and fulfill that and would be the truest king of Israel. In fact, when the angel Gabriel came to Mary to announce the birth of Jesus, he says, Jesus will be great, and he'll be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give to him the throne of his father David. So why isn't this the stump of David? Well, let's think about David, because David is implicitly depicted and referenced in this image, in this family tree. Because the only thing that's really notable about Jesse is that he was David's father. So by mentioning Jesse, Isaiah wants us to think of David. So where is David on this family tree? Well, he's kind of been chopped down, hasn't he? He's kind of laid next to the stump. David was a good king. You might even say he was a great king. But David was not a perfect king. And what's more, those who followed him were pretty bad. If Jesse is the stump, then David and all those who followed grew upwards above this stump, sending out their own branches of their own family lines. And what happened is, as the tree grew, the rot got worse the further it went from the root. We'll think about who the root is in a minute. And so this line of kings was going to be removed. And so Isaiah is prophesying this line of kings will fall. It would be cut down. We'll be back to the drawing board. And we would need a new king. Not one that comes out of the line of these kings, but one who is his own true line. And that's what happens. At the time that Jesus is born in Bethlehem, there is no king in Israel. The line of the kings is toppled. Sure, there's King Herod, as he liked to call himself, but he was not a true king of Israel. He was appointed by the Romans. There was no king in Israel when Jesus was born. And so the tree is chopped back, as it were, to Jesse. David, the first true king, came from Jesse, and now Jesus is shown to be the same kind of king as David. Jesus is shown to be the same kind of king as David, a true king, because he also comes from the line of Jesse. So, does that mean that Jesus is this rod then? Well, no. Kind of yes, but mainly no. This prophecy of a rod, a new line, is about the birth of Jesus. But the rod has traditionally been understood not to be Jesus, but to be Mary, his mother. And we might say, but hang on, the carol says... Yeah, no, I get it. It makes the carol a little less clear, but we're not taking the carol as authoritative now, are we? Mary is from the family of Jesse. And in a moment, you might be like, hang on a minute, just in a moment you'll see why it's important that Mary is the rod, once we've learned who the root is. So just hold that in your head for now. And it's not actually that odd that Isaiah would reference Mary and make a prophecy about her. He's already done that just a few chapters before, in chapter 7. He says, behold, a virgin will conceive and bear a son. So isn't that strange that he might reference her? So where is Jesus in this picture then? Well, Jesus is the branch from the second part of the verse. There will come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root will bear fruit. Except it's not really a branch. It's not the same word as the other one. This might be better translated as bud, and often it is. Bud or flower. It's a different word from the word for rod. It's a bud that would flower and bear fruit. It would be fruitful, Isaiah says. So let's just get our heads around some agricultural facts. I'm not much of a gardener, but I know a little bit to make this make sense. Buds or flowers, and somebody after the service will go, well, actually they do, but you can do that, but if I'm wrong. But generally, Buds or flowers don't grow directly from the root, do they? They don't grow under the ground from the roots. Where do they grow? Well, they grow on the end of a stem or on the end of a rod. Whilst that is true, that flowers grow on the end of a stem, we could say that the bud also grows from the root, just as we could say that about any part of the plants. For the life of the bud comes from the root of the plant. So what Isaiah is telling us here is that the tree of David's line has fallen, or will fall. But from Jesse, a new stem will grow. Not a vast trunk, but a delicate stem, a delicate shoot. And from that shoot, a flower will grow. A flower whose beginnings and life will be found in the root, will come from the root. So who's the root? It's God the Father. It's God the Father. The root precedes the stump. It is from before the stump. Where is the origin of Jesse and all his family to be found? In God. God is the root of all life. Trace back the family tree of humanity far enough, as Luke does in chapter 3 of his gospel, and it ends with this: who was the son of Adam, who was the son of God. Humanity's beginning is in God. What is Isaiah telling us then about Jesus? The rod is described as coming from the stump. Mary's generation is normal. It comes from the stump. It comes from the normal human line in the normal human way of things. In the normal way of things. But the bud that comes from her, the life that comes out of her, does not merely come from the stump, but from the very root. The bud of Christ might bloom on the Virgin Mary, might appear and look as though it were any other bud, but the bud is described as coming from the root. The fruitful, flowering bud is Jesus. He blooms forth from the Virgin Mary, but he is begotten of the Father. His life comes from the Father, from the root. This delicate stem grows out of the stump, and this delicate stem topples all of the kings that came before, and it flowers, and it brings fruit and life to the world. This is the incarnation. God has joined humanity. Jesus, divine and human, God and man, God in the flesh, God come down. In the incarnation, the life of God bursts through the bud of human flesh. Jesus is born of a woman, like everyone else, but he's born of a virgin. Because his life does not come from the will of a man, but from the will of his Father in heaven. At Christmas, the divine life enters into our humanity, joins our family tree, and starts a new line, a new branch, a new family that we can be part of. No matter how rotten you may feel your family tree is, no matter how desperate things may seem, no matter how much your tree may have seemed to have fallen, Christ offers you his family tree. How? How can we be part of that tree? This is how St. Paul describes becoming a Christian. Romans, he says, although a wild olive shoot, you were grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing root of the tree. When we are baptized into Jesus. We are grafted into Jesus. We share in him, in his life. The life that flows in him from the root of the Father flows in us. Jesus says in John's Gospel, chapter 15, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, it is he that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Grafted into Jesus, we begin to bear fruit. Before Jesus, our lives were fruitless. But in Jesus, our lives begin to make sense. Our lives are often still hard. We still have to face hard things in life. But as we face these things, we find we are made fruitful. Our lives begin to make sense. They're put in place. They're put in order. We have Jesus' life coursing through us. We are part of his family. And we see our lives becoming fruitful as we begin to become what we were made to be. What child is this? This is the God child. Truly man, truly God. The one who, although he was born and laid in a manger as a newborn baby, he is also the one who is from the foundation of the earth. He is the true Christmas bud or flower, or for the sake of our carol, the true Christmas branch. And this is why we love Christmas trees. Because Christmas trees are a Christian symbol. Now, you might hear all sorts of weird ideas about the pagan origins of Christmas. And it sometimes really feels as though some Christians just have this strange obsession with connecting all of our wonderful Christmas traditions with some ancient pagan festival. But the truth is, there is almost no evidence to back up this claim. And to be honest, even if it did turn out to be true, even if the Christmas tree did have some pagan roots, so what? God made trees. They belong to him. He said they were good, and we will not surrender to Satan the good that Jesus has made. If Satan did try and claim some sort of winter tree for his festivals, we're taking it back. It's ours. But the fact is, there is no evidence of any pagan origins of the Christmas tree. Contrary to popular belief in the media, these articles come out all the time, don't they? Every Christmas they're wheeled out, poorly researched. There are no references to trees being decorated as a part of the Saturnalia celebrations, or Yule celebrations, or Sol Invictus celebrations, or even the Celtic winter festivals. In fact, there is very little historical evidence connecting any ancient practice to our modern Christmas trees, including Christianity. So how can we call it a Christian symbol? Because it just is. It just is. I was reminded recently that the whole swath of history is simply competing stories clashing into each other. That's all history is. Competing stories clashing into each other. You've heard the saying, haven't you? History is written by the victors. Whoever wins gets to say what happens. Or Napoleon apparently put it this way. He said, history is just a fable agreed upon. It's a story we all agree on. The point is, all we can know about the past is what's passed on to us. We weren't there. We can only believe what was passed on to us. And in church, we have many, many stories that are passed down to us. And one of them is about the Christmas tree. And it all started 1300 years ago with a man called Boniface. St. Boniface was a Christian, and he was born in England, and he was a monk. And he deeply desired that everyone should know the good news of Jesus. And so he was sent to the pagan land of Germany to preach the good news of Jesus to the people there. Many of the people in Germany at that time worshipped, they were pagans. They worshipped pagan gods, and they would make sacrifices to them. And in one town, every winter, they would sacrifice a child to their pagan god. They would tie the child to their sacred tree, this great big oak, and there they would sacrifice the child. But the story goes that Boniface, hearing about this, travelled to this town. And he arrived there just as they were about to commit their yearly sacrifice. Seeing this, Boniface leaps into action. He grabs a nearby axe and he starts hacking away at the ropes that held the boy in place. Boniface freed the boy, but he didn't stop chopping. He kept on chopping until that mighty oak fell. The people were shocked. They were sure that their God was going to smite Boniface on the spot, but nothing happened. Instead, Boniface stood there and he told them about Jesus. He told them about the one true God who does not require a sacrifice from us, but became a sacrifice for us. Boniface wanted to show the people they did not need to fear these pagan gods, and that with Jesus they were safe just as he was. And so all the people of the town wanted to follow Jesus instead of this other god. And the story goes that out of this stump, or next to this stump, depending which one you read, out of the roots of the oak, a fir tree grew in its place. Because it replaced their sacred tree, it became seen as a symbol of the Christian faith. A symbol of the Christian God who had pushed out, replaced, and defeated the pagan gods. St. Boniface's God had repelled the old, fearful religion and had replaced it with evergreen life. It is said that St. Boniface pointed to the tree and said, "This little tree shall be your holy tree. It is the sign of an endless life, for its leaves are evergreen. Gather around it, not in the wood, but in your own homes. Instead of death, let loving gifts surround it." From then on, each year, the people of that town would go into the forest and bring fir trees into their homes. They would decorate them and give gifts. It was a reminder of the day that Jesus defeated their pagan god and freed them from fear and death. If the whole swath of history is about stories clashing into each other, then one of the great claims of Christianity is to say, no, wait, this is the real one. This, you've heard all your stories, but this is the true one. We weren't there in that German town. We don't know if it happened exactly like that. That's not the point. It is a story that communicates the truth of the gospel. It's a story that fits with Isaiah 11, and therefore it is true. Jesus is the branch, the bud, the tree that grows and pushes everything evil and false out of its way. He is the tree that topples the false gods and the wicked kingdoms of this world. He is the new growth that can displace the idols in our own hearts, who can free us and show us there's nothing to fear. He is the God-man who bursts forth and breaks through into our everyday lives. He is the divine human who joins us in our mess and brings us light, life, hope, and joy. He is the branch, the bud, that makes us fruitful. And so, this Christmas, enjoy your Christmas tree. Observe how it points to heaven. See in its triangular boughs the 3 points of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. See how it is evergreen and never dying. See how its light pushes back the darkness. While all the trees outside are limp, wet and dying, we have a tree in our homes that becomes the central focal point as we gather around it and sing. Its life and joy radiates out to us. Jesus is the true Christmas tree. The branch that came from Jesse, the bud that comes from Mary, who comes to us from the roots of all eternity. All other family trees will die. Only Jesus's will last. Your Christmas tree preaches this to you. Glory. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.